Okay, go in now.
Okay. The next step is to cut the countertop. Now this is pre-finished in the workshop, so we've got a finished front edge that needs to line up with the front of the unit. I'm going to give it a 10mm overhang, which is a little bit less than we normally do, but that's because this comes so tight to the chimney breast. I don't want it to stick out too far where it meets this corner. So my method for this is to tape all the edges and then to plot the shape of the carcass, which if you just come a little bit closer, you'll see this light line here is the plotted outline of the carcass that it's going to sit on. So I've measured that off. I know that the shape of this, because this has been computer designed and then cut out in the workshop, I know the shape of this is around about 20mm oversize on every edge that meets the wall, and it's been cut so that the angles are the same as the angles of the unit. So that makes it a bit easier to plot this sideline parallel with this edge and get that outline. And I've taken some care to space that, just considering things like where this is going to fall, so that gets cut into the unit and doesn't hit the side panel, that sort of thing. So once I've plotted the unit below, I can simply measure off the unit itself and transfer those measurements. So taking this side as an example, the wall here has quite a big curve in it. So I've plotted, mind yourself on the pipe there. Can you just see in here? I've plotted 50mm steps, and at each of those I've read off my gap to the wall, which is getting bigger as I go towards that not a bulge, that sort of concave shape. So I've measured each of those off. I've then gone over to the relevant end and transferred the measurements, which I do by adding 10 and referencing off the 10 point, because that's a little bit easier than referencing off the hook. So that was about 26, and then I've done a mark, as you can see, plotting them, and then I've joined the lines up. So I've got my curve. Same along the back, same along the other end. And I don't expect it to be a perfect fit straight off. Because I'm plotting the exact measured width, I would expect it to be too tight, because you could get away with maybe a couple of millimeters play either side. So I know that I've got perhaps up to 4mm that I could further trim back off this before it starts looking like a poor fit. So this is how I do it. I know people that would always template it. I'm quite impatient. I like to just get cutting the finished piece. It's arguably a bit of a risk, but I think when you've got the experience and you double check every measurement, then you can be pretty confident that it's going to fit. So having checked that, double checked it, I'll go straight on to rail sawing these things. And this one I'll have to do in a, sort of like a couple of different placements of the saw. I'll rail saw all this off, test fit it, put it on the angle like I do with the shelves, so I can offer an end up and see the contour. And then I would mark again, and I'd probably do that with the power plane. So I'll just cut one of these while you're filming. Now you might have noticed before, I like to drop in just a couple of millimeters to get a really clean cut on the top surface, and then to drop down the full depth. And I usually just do that by feel. I don't usually set the depth stop to the 2mm. So then I've just got to reposition that as it follows that curve. This is how it looks after the first cut. This is what I would expect. It's a little bit too big, but I can offer it up and see how tight the fit is, which is pretty tight. There's quite a curve on that wall, and that's fitting well. So I can now just scribe back to get that gap consistent, and it would probably not be a gap anymore because I've got enough material to remove before it drops in tight, that I should be able to get those gaps just very, very snug now. Okay.
Yep.
So this is the bottom edge. I'm planing it off just so that it will smoothly drop in, because it's very tight. But I'm wary of trimming more, because sometimes then you trim too much and you regret it. So I think this might just slide in. Let's give that a try. It's just to that point where I've got to judge whether I try and force it and then never get it out, or trim it some more.
Let's start recording then. Do you want to keep going?
No, film it as I give it a shot. Speak it in. Yeah, I'll take it out again, trim it a little bit more.
It's just stuck on that cable, isn't it?
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Ah, I see. Thank you. Could have knackered that. Now it's very nice and tight end to end, but I think it's just done that slightly. We've got a bit of a gap opened up there, which is probably sending it a little bit off from parallel. Yeah, it's about 4mm kicked forward here, so I need to effectively be rotating that in, which means taking a little bit more off that back edge and a little bit more off this front edge, so that allows it to turn. So I'll do that next, this one. So that's looking good. This is nice, we're just stopping tight to the wall, which I think is the best way to detail that. We'd normally have it coming over, but the scribe that will be flush with the doors will hit the wall just tight, and it wouldn't have looked so neat if this came over and had a cut end there. Just got about a 3 or 4mm overhang. Which is about 5 or 6 there, so I will just take that extra couple of mil off to allow that twist so it's just right, and then we'll be done. Okay. Well, here's the final fit, and you saw I was fairly perfectionistic about it. It is parallel to the front now. The fit looks very good. It could be better, if I'm honest. I mean, it could always be a little bit better, and I think there are guys out there who would have done pretty much what I've done on a template, got it to this stage, and then what you could do is then offer the template up to the wood, maybe just add on a millimetre or two there, as well, to get it absolutely spot on. But it may not drop in then, because the alcove comes up and also kicks in. You can't push it in, you have to get it in the angle, drop it down, and if the alcove has come in here, you need a bit more clearance. So I think in reality this is about the best you can do, and I think it's fair to say that is a good fit. The next step will be putting these scribes on the side, handles on the doors, drilling through this 80mm hole, and then dropping some solid oak cable outlets into both those holes, and we'll be done with this base unit then. It might interest you that we had a bit of a misunderstanding in the workshop about how to cut that large angled countertop out. So the first drawing that was produced and went to the workshop suggested that it should be cut from the 600mm wide oak board that we get from Optimum Timber Supplies, and then this offcut could be spun round and attached to the front here. But this wasn't how I wanted it done, because this would have resulted in the grain running this way and a lot of sort of grain cutting into that frontage. So the way that I always had done it and had to sort of communicate to staff that's how it should have been drawn, is where the 600mm wide board runs parallel with the front edge, the edge that you see. So your oak grain is oriented to the finished edge. I think that's the correct way to do it. And then what we were able to do is, although it maybe looks different here, we actually took that offcut and put it at the back. So that's something that to me is quite important, getting your grain running in the right direction and not sort of cutting through it just for convenience in terms of how you lay the part out on the material.